All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 2 of the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider podcast.
The Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider, the uncut, uncensored podcast, bringing you the refreshing, no fluff, no BS views in business, sales, and marketing you desire. Your host, author, marketing strategist, direct response copywriter, and serial entrepreneur, Eric Barton, the results specialist. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider. We have a lot of things exciting coming up today and in the future for you. So make sure you hit that subscription button right now so you don't miss the Value Pack podcast coming. And before we dive into our show and our very special guest today, real quick, I want to welcome you to go over to FastEasySuccess.com. Go ahead and grab your business building tips sent directly to your email. And when you head over to FastEasySuccess.com, I'm also going to give you a nice gift, your free business cheat sheets. And these are going to help you with your website, emails, and writing. All right, let's dive in because I'm excited to be talking to my special guest. He's joining you and I on our show today, a man that I've known about for quite a while. You've probably heard of him if you spent any time looking online or off at marketing and copywriting. And even if you haven't discovered this man yet, you're definitely in for a treat. He's a direct response entrepreneur, marketer, and copywriter, or what he likes to call a kitchen table entrepreneur. He's written hundreds of successful ads, sales letters, direct mail packages, email marketing campaigns, articles, websites, press releases, and newsletters. And his ads and articles have appeared in places like Muscle Mag, International, Flex, Muscle and Fitness, Penthouse, Men's Edge, Iron Man, The National Enquirer, Weekly World News, and many more mainstream newspapers and magazines. If you haven't heard of him yet, it's because he's been keeping a pretty low profile over the past decade or so. And even in first 8 years, he actually was studying in his copywriting career. He only wrote copy for himself and his own projects. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome Doberman Dan on the show today. Dan, thank you so much, for taking the time to jam with us today. We really appreciate it.
Eric, it's my pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. Been looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I'm definitely excited to have you here, like I said. And I know everybody has their ticket out there, so let's jump on this profitable thrill ride here. Let me ask you real quick, for the people not familiar with you, Dan, how did you really get the bug or start out in the sales, marketing, and copywriting world out there?
Well, it's kind of funny. A lot of entrepreneurs I talk to got their start as paper boys, and I was a paper boy.
Me too.
Were you really? It's amazing how common that is. I didn't want to be a paper boy. What I really wanted was I played guitar, and I wanted to buy some guitar gear, and couldn't sucker my parents into buying it, so I thought, well, damn it, I guess I have to make my own money, and been doing that ever since. But, I really knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I grew up in a town called Barberton, Ohio, which nothing against Barberton. It was a cool little place to grow up, but it was, back then it was right near Akron, which was an industrial area. It was the rubber capital of the world where all the tire companies had their world headquarters. So pretty much your fate, if you were a Barbertonian, you grew up like me, lower middle class. Maybe if you're lucky, you were middle class. And your fate was you were going to graduate from high school, more than likely without any money to go to college, so you go to work in one of the factories. And, that was our conditioning. That's what we were groomed for. And in spite of having other dreams, I didn't know the principles of success. And frankly, I didn't know, like Woody Allen says, that 90% of success is just showing up. So,
right.
I could have successfully pursued what my lifelong dream was, and still is to this day, to be a full-time musician. I let the conditioning, the Barberton, Ohio conditioning, get to me. So I went out and got me a civil service job and actually wound up being a police officer for 12 years.
Right. I remember reading this in some of your newsletters, too, that you put out, and that's definitely an interesting story. So you started out as a police officer, right?
Yeah, you know, a lower middle-class guy from Barberton is told, you know, that is a good deal, and that's the best he's ever going to be able to do with his life. So I still wanted more. I just didn't know what I wanted and didn't understand entrepreneurship. Somebody hit me up for Amway. Have you ever gotten hit up for any of those multi-level?
Yeah.
It's amazing how many people find their way into entrepreneurship as a result of getting hit up for one of these MLM deals. So I failed at Amway pretty badly and went into a lot of debt. But at least, you know, they conditioned you to read these books and listen to these tapes about being your own boss, and that got me started on the track. So for 12 years, I was a full-time cop, and 9 of those years, the last 9 of those years, I was a part-time entrepreneur, trying various businesses, the Amway business, even another multi-level, 2 different vending businesses.
Right.
Let's see what else. I've lost track. I think, a home improvement business with my neighbor, who was a drug addict. I didn't realize.
Good partner, huh?
Yeah, really good partner there. Anyway, to make a long story short, all failures, every single one of them failures. You know, so deeper and deeper in debt, money I didn't have that I financed on my credit cards, and I stumbled upon this kit called the Magnetic Marketing Kit by Dan Kennedy, right, which is a series of template sales letters and ads that you can use to help market your business. So whatever business I had at the time that was failing miserably, I thought this could save it. But after I saw what Dan Kennedy was doing, he sold me a bunch of paper in a 3-ring binder with this will really date me, with 6 cassette tapes.
Right, badly copied. Papers, a lot of the letters.
The cassette tapes were like probably 10th generation, you know, copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
Right.
You know, and had copies of copies of copies. For I remember the price exactly, $397.
Mm-hmm.
That was such stretch for me, so out of my comfort zone, to spending $400 on what's basically a book.
Right.
But it was my turning point. It was when I thought, holy crap, if this guy can sell paper and ink and a couple cassettes for $400, I don't want to do these other businesses. I want to do this. And so I started a mail order business in what was my main hobby at the time, which was bodybuilding, and self-published a bodybuilding manual. Initially failed with my initial attempts to sell it, and then I went to 2-step advertising, generating lead, following up with a sales letter, and then eventually learning that I needed to bulk up the package. Instead of a book, I turned it into a manual with cassettes, a VH. This would date me even more. A VHS video, couple special reports, a phone consulting coupon, you know. So I got the price up from whatever initially was, you know, like $10, got the price up to $97. And it was the first successful business after 9 years of failure that I started. And then only about a year later, it was making enough money that I was able to gain my freedom from the job I had come to hate. And that's my introduction into being an entrepreneur.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, that first venture, when you actually make money. It's wonderful after, especially failing and attempting, but it definitely pays off. And look at you now, here we are. That's nice. And I know in your story too that you also mentored with Gary Halbert, who unfortunately is not with us anymore, and if people aren't listening, you can definitely Google him. He was a great direct response marketer and copywriter. But you mentored with him, and you lived with him for a while, right?
Yeah. Well, see, I developed a voracious appetite for this direct response marketing stuff. Right. And copywriting. I never wanted to be a copywriter. I just wanted to have a successful mail order business because of the time freedom thing and to get me free of that job that I started to hate. But, right. I couldn't afford to hire a real copywriter, so I had to learn how to do it myself. So I subscribed to, this was in the mid-'90s, so I subscribed to both Dan Kennedy's news. And initially Dan Kennedy's newsletter, and then he mentioned Halbert. When I heard Halbert also grew up in the same town as me, Barberton, Ohio, I was intrigued, and Dan Kennedy highly endorsed him. And right. So I started getting Halbert's newsletter. And just, I got mad respect for Dan Kennedy. And, now over the years we've even gotten to know each other pretty well and correspond regularly. Got mad respect for Dan Kennedy, who is also another Ohio boy, but for some reason I just felt a really strong connection with Halbert, and I just felt like if I could mentor with that guy, he would get me, and he would understand the early bad conditioning I had, having also grown up in under the same circumstances in Barberton, Ohio. So I worked really hard to get on his radar, and I won't bore you with the details of how I did that. That was about a 2-year process, but
yeah, you're motivated, huh?
Extremely. In fact, I actually took what I learned in his newsletter on how to get a VIP's attention and turned it around on him and used it on him. And so we wound up corresponding and working together. I moved out of the country and moved to Costa Rica. Just one day, I thought, I've lived in Ohio way too long, and these winters suck. And I've never visited Costa Rica before in my life, but Halbert had written a newsletter about it, and I'd spoken to him about it, and I thought it sounded good. So in a matter of like 2 weeks, sold everything I had and left with nothing but the clothes on my back, my laptop computer, and my dog, my Doberman, and moved to Costa Rica and emailed Gary and said, hey, remember when we spoke about Costa Rica a few weeks ago? Well, I'm living there now. And he was blown away. So he, when he would come visit his girlfriend, he'd crash at my place. And then one time he said, I'm coming to visit my girlfriend. Could I stay the weekend? I said, sure. And he actually didn't leave for 4 months. His week, quote unquote, turned into 4 months. And then he talked me into moving back to the States, which I said I would never do, and staying in the same building as him in what he called his client apartment, a small apartment, a few floors below his. So, all in all, between sharing places together, and we worked together a couple years, year and a half, couple years, worked directly with Gary.
Nice. I mean, I'm sure you learned hundreds of lessons from him. I mean, is there a lesson, maybe not even on the copy side, but maybe even business that kind of sticks out to you? Something you kind of took away?
I'm still learning from him because what happened during all that time together, obviously initially it started out as more of a business relationship, but then, once a friendship developed, the relationship takes on another dynamic, and, it's less of a mentor-mentee teaching relationship at that point. It's more of he just let me observe his life and how he dealt with things. And it was a lot to take in, I'll be honest with you. A lot of it was over my head at the time. but it did sink in through my thick skull, and so here we're 6 years after his death, and holy smokes, man, 10, 11 years, or 11, whatever it's been, 11 or 12 years since I was working with him personally, the things I observed, those lessons have finally, become concrete in my head, and I finally understand the lessons. Yeah, a lot of copywriting lessons, but lessons about human nature and persuasion, business lessons, and crazy life lessons. A lot of lessons about money too. That at the time I didn't understand. I probably was catching 15% of it at the time. The other 85% has finally congealed in my brain, over the past decade or so.
Yeah, that's amazing how some of those lessons, but I'm sure living with them every day eventually it just kind of got into you as a habit. I was thinking about something you said, even going back to when you started as a police officer. You said there's actually something that drug dealers and the mafia and other criminal scum can teach us about really multiplying our money. And can you let us in on that, or did you learn that from being a police officer first of all, or?
Well, I quickly learned. I was. I'm a little guy. I got a little frame. I'm all of 5'6", and I was 20 years old when I was in the academy. It's 21 by the time of graduation, because that was the legal age necessary in the state of Ohio to be a police officer. Okay. And I probably weighed all of $135 maybe, or $140. I was a little guy, and always looked younger than I really was. So I probably looked like a 14 or 15-year-old kid in that uniform. And, and they threw me to the wolves. They put me in the absolute worst neighborhood, of Dayton, Ohio, which was affectionately known as Little Detroit, to give you an idea of the daily violence we had to deal with. And I quickly figured out that, I had a gun and a radio, but my most important weapon was my mind. And if I didn't figure out how to use that pretty damn quick, I would be dead literally, not just out of a job. I would be killed. My second day on the job, I am staring down the barrel of a 12-gauge shotgun that had been shoved in my face by this crack-smoking maniac, okay? So those are the kind of lessons you're forced into learning: how to talk to people, how to use your brain, and how to gauge the situation, and how to talk to people to influence and persuade them with your choice of words, the way you say things, your countenance, the way you hold your body, your tone of voice. And, that was just pure survival. Interestingly enough, when I got into direct marketing and copywriting, it gave me a huge advantage over other copywriters. Even these guys,
that's what I was saying. You're in the streets. You probably had the huge advantage psychologically and, like you said, preparing mentally and just dealing with these people.
Oh yeah, I mean, nothing against these guys who take a course or AWAI's course and then start writing copy, but they're going to have to work for a good 3 decades, 2 to 3 decades, before they understand the nuances of human nature that an inner city street cop is going to learn in his first 6 months. Right. So even though that was never part of the plan, the cop experience worked out pretty darn good in the copywriting department.
Yeah, nice.
And the criminal, you learned a lot from criminals and drug dealers, and I can't go into all of it. I could do an entire call about that.
There's lessons from everything. In my last course, I talked about the Mayflower Madam. I don't know if you remember Sydney Barrows, and she was running a big high escort agency in New York. And a lot of people are thinking, what can I learn from the sex business or escort business? But the truth is actually a lot. She was really successful in what she was doing because she was selling the experience versus, cheap sex. She was making it more about the experience. And that's just an example. You can take something from an illegal or dirty side, like you're saying, the drug dealers and everybody, and really take lessons from it if you use it properly. So. Oh,
absolutely. It's, the principles work. Whether you choose to use them for evil or good, they all work the same. Right. So, yeah, a lot of valuable lessons learned from the bad guys that have wound up working really well in the direct marketing business when used for good purposes to influence people in a good way. Right.
I definitely agree. And what is that? The big debate on manipulation or persuasion. Persuasion is kind of, getting people to pick the correct answer, and manipulation is making somebody do that. Something like that. So, but, okay. Yeah, that's good. And even going back to like you were saying, dealing with these people, it's obviously good for getting into the copy or writing the sales letter. And one thing I do a lot when I'm about to start a project, and I know a lot of people do this, is the research, because, I know if you talk to a lot of people, once you do a lot of research and you have all the information, the writing part of it becomes easy. So it's not really sexy to do all the research, but that's very, an important step. Is that one of your first exact steps that you do before you start your project, or?
Yep. I used to watch Halbert goof off. I called it goofing off for sometimes weeks or months at a time. And actually what he was doing, he'd load up his mind with all the research he could possibly find. And then at that point, he would just literally mentally let it go and goof off. Either screw around on his boat, go run errands, we go buy CDs or whatever. This would usually last weeks, and I didn't get it at the time. All I saw was a big 5-figure check come in, and then at that point, saw him do his research, make a few notes here and there, and then goof off for weeks at a time. And I thought, how can you accept that much money from somebody and not be working on their stuff? We were always his boat, and I had feelings about that. And then finally one day he just said, turn the boat around. We're going back to the apartment. And he didn't say a word. And didn't say a word up to the apartment. He literally just walked up the stairs. We walked in the apartment. He sat down on his table, and he always wrote his sales letters out by hand. He never used a computer. He just writing. And in about an hour and a half or so, 2 hours, he was finished. So, literally 4, 5, whatever it was, maybe even 6 weeks of goofing off and an hour and a half of writing. And when he finished, this was one of the few things that he ever, taught me, where he sat down and said, Dan, this is why I did this and why. He never did this. He never did that. All he do is just let me observe and let me come to my own conclusions. But this time, he did do some actual teaching, and he said, Dan, how long did it take me to write this ad? And I looked at the clock, and whatever it was, 90 minutes or 2 hours. I'm like, Gary, it was 90 minutes. And he said, you're wrong. It was 90 minutes to write the ad, and the last 6 weeks of us running errands and goofing off on the boat. Because that time he crammed his head full of the research, and that entire time he was just letting his brain chew on that research until finally the breakthrough theme or idea finally just came out of the blue, and that was the time to begin his writing. So research is really the biggest part. If you've got, let's say you've got 100 hours to write an ad, 90% of that, 90 hours should be research.
Right. Yeah, it definitely makes the writing. You have so many ideas. Like you said, you would go out and come back, the big idea would hit, you'd be set. When you have that big idea hit, do you usually jump into the headlines after that too? After you have like the hook or the big idea, do you jump into the headlines, or do you kind of just jump through the copy? And I know some people, they'll start at the top, work their way down, and a lot of times I'll do that on the headlines too. I'll start at the top and then just kind of work my way down. But do you have a special method that you do, or is it kind of vary?
I know a lot of guys have a format and they always stick with it.
Right.
Like Paris Lampropoulos, who is a rock star copywriter, always starts with the bullets. Other people always start with headlines. Other people always start with the order copy.
Right.
I have no set system whatsoever. I
Right.
start with whatever, for some reason, is prompting me the most. If all of a sudden I have a bunch of headline ideas, that's where I start. A lot of times I will literally just start with the body copy. Sometimes it'll be, just writing bullets, which can serve as headline options. Yeah,
Right.
I've got no set way of doing that.
Right. I've sometimes I'll be writing something and have an idea even for the close when I'm in the introduction and go down to the close and then kind of go back up. But I was just kind of wondering, when you do headlines, do you have a special method or technique that you use that might be helpful to some of the listeners? Or?
I have read so many headlines over so many years,
Right.
so many swipe files that stuff, I couldn't get it out of my head if I wanted to. So that stuff is available to me in my brain. I still, though, it's so unorganized. Right now, it's in a big, I've got magalogs and mail pieces strewn all over in my office. I also have a couple big plastic bins full, not organized in any manner whatsoever.
That's it. I'm sitting here staring at my office with big plastic bin full of all these swipes and stuff too, yeah.
I have the best of intentions of organizing them according to, subject, but...
Yeah, niche, market, everything, yeah.
That would make sense, but that would also take up time I don't want to take up.
Right.
So now it's, and I can find inspiration from any of those. It doesn't matter what market. So sometimes I'll just literally dump those things out all over the floor, cause chaos, which my wife hates. She's like super neat freak. And I'll just start flipping through those to see if there's any inspiration that happens from that. That plus all the headlines and ideas I've crammed in my head. The thing is, don't get it confused. Creativity is really overrated and not necessary at all in copywriting. In fact, I'll take it even one step further. There is no creativity, and I'm not talking about just in copywriting. At this point, I'm talking about any field, music,
right.
Medicine. There is no creativity. There's only synthesis. What people confuse for creativity, and they think, well, I came up with this idea or I developed this great headline. No, you didn't. You synthesized.
Right.
Because you ain't God. God, as far as I know, and my understanding of the spiritual side of things, is quite that ain't my bag, man. That's not my area of expertise. But As far as I know, God is the only one who's created anything. The rest of us just synthesize things from stuff already created. So you don't have to take all those various things and synthesize your own headline or hook or theme.
Right, just take what's already worked and add your unique twist to it. So there's really, unfortunately, not a lot of original ideas left out there. Everything's been done in one way or another, so it's our job to kind of put a unique twist on it.
Absolutely.
I know, we were talking about, too, with the headlines and the bullets, like you said. I mean, Ben Settle and I were on the show last week. We were talking about some bullets, and we brought up the old, and speaking of Gary Halbert, and I couldn't remember the ad, and he couldn't either, I think, but we were thinking about the old ad that the one bullet, it was something like the legalized fake cocaine or something like how to make fake cocaine. And supposedly that ad was sold strictly from that bullet. That was like the major selling point on that one bullet alone. And it had nothing to do with the product, if I remember right. Just people wanted to know what that illegal cocaine was at the time. Is that something like that? Is that how it kind of went?
Yeah, and if my memory serves me correctly, this was an ad for something completely unrelated. It was for how to start a business or some sort of biz-op product.
Yeah, it was something totally unrelated, I remember.
Completely unrelated. I don't know how he tied the product, but the bullet was, something like fake cocaine, the substance that can fool even the experts. And he said, it was almost positive as Entrepreneur Magazine. Entrepreneur Magazine got calls for years just asking specifically about that bullet. They would, the people weren't even calling to order the product. They were just calling to say, hey, could you tell us what that fake cocaine is?
That's amazing. Those, just one good bullet can definitely sell a product or service all day long. And like you said, years later, people are calling about that. That's funny. When in the sales letter, like when you get down to the bullets, I mean, what I've noticed too, like even going back to copy, when we're writing, we're going from headlines to the introduction to the bullets, and then we get down towards even the close. That's where a lot of people kind of wimp out or just drop the ball. They kind of like, here it is, do you want it? After they did all this, selling, all this value building, and then just kind of say, here you go, do you want it? Do you have like a favorite type of close you like? Kind of like you can get it here or be stuck doing this, or do you kind of vary your closes as well? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, like I said, a lot of those people just kind of at the end, they just drop the ball. They just lose it. Here it is.
That's a good point, Eric. Especially people who've just made a great case. They've done their job. They've hit on all the emotions that get people to buy. They've got all the proof elements, and then it's like letting the air out of the balloon when they get to the close. I don't write by formula anymore. I think I've done it so long, and I've studied, this stuff for so long, and I've studied so many pieces. I don't just read people's copy when there's a control or big success. I study it and I break it down and figure out what they're doing at this point. And so after having done that so long, I just don't use formulas. I've got one I'll give you here in a second, which is a very easy one to remember, and it also allows you a lot of leeway in how you write your piece. You're not like stuck in a box, but so I don't really use formulas or have a closing formula. I like to, but one that I seem to be using a lot recently is, I get to the close, and it's basically I said, look, in the time we've spent together today, I've shown you your two possible futures. Okay, future one is you, slim and trim with a beach body that women admire and men envy, and with no health problems and blah, blah, you know, your hair grows back, you attract your ideal mate, you know, a beer company gives you $1 million to make a commercial, or your other possible future, you're still sitting on your fat butt in front of the TV, watching pizza, drinking beer, and you're depressed and have no purpose for your life.
Right, the whole crosswords. Or
crossroads. Yeah, you're at a crossroads. The choice is you. And then you got to tell them exactly what to do. I mean, you would think, listen, don't ever overestimate the intelligence of your market. They ain't stupid, but they are looking to be led. So you have to, you know, lead them and tell them exactly what you want to do, you know.
Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of people assume, like, you know, that they're just going to catch on or do what you know, not tell them to do, just kind of go with what you do. But like you said, a great point, you got to kind of lead them to where you want. You
got to lead them, and a lot of times it helps to tell them what to expect, too. You know, call 800. Go to this website. When you get to this website, you're going to see you know, you're going to see this, a place to submit your address and name and email and credit card information. Once that's submitted, you know, you'll receive a confirmation email, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't hurt to tell them what to expect.
Yeah, spell it out.
Too.
Yeah, I was trying to think when it was done, but I don't know if it's still current, but I've tested it, and I just used another number. But what I was saying is there was a test, too, a while back where they tested toll-free numbers versus just normal, like, local numbers with local area codes. And what happened was a lot of the people, the local numbers were outpulling the toll-free numbers, and the major reason when they interviewed or surveyed people they found is they didn't know what to expect, or they thought they were going to be pitched from some big corporation. So it's basically like if they would have explained that, you know, there's no one, like you're saying, lead them through exactly what's going to happen. You know, when you call this toll-free number or wherever you're calling, you know, no one's going to pitch you. We're just going to provide, you know, blah, 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 you know, ABC. But when you tell them what to expect and you follow through, it also makes it look like, you know, obviously you keep your word, which can help too.
Yep, that doesn't surprise me. In lead gen too, we've found the same thing. We used to call it a POTS line, which is just an acronym we made up, stands for plain old telephone service, as to an 800 number line. When we put a POTS line in there and specifically said 24-hour recorded message, there was less resistance to calling because they knew a human being wasn't going to answer it, and people were scared to death that a salesman's going to answer and sell them stuff and upsell them stuff. So that doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
that's a good point too. I mean, if you tell them there's no one there, it's a recorded message. They're not, you know, expecting to get pitched and everything. We're you know, speaking of that, bringing people into that, like lead generation. Do you do like more online lead generation now, or are you still sticking with a lot of the offline magazines, et cetera, like to generate your leads and bring them online?
Well, when I started, offline lead gen in the magazines and newspapers and direct mail was the only option. But now, you know, it's shifted. It used to be 50-50 for me back when, with several businesses I had, you know, I split it up. 50% was offline lead gen, 50% was online. And now I think maybe, and it depends on the market, the numbers may skew more to 80% online, 20% offline, and in other markets it's mostly online because it's just the best bang for the buck, and you get targeting options that are just not, you just can't target so tightly with the offline lead gen. But offline lead gen in many markets is still very viable, and if you're ignoring it, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. In fact, in certain business niches, it may be your only viable option. Online may not even be a viable option at all, especially if you're talking about trade.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you said, trades, financial, a lot of those places can't advertise like that. So, wow, yeah. I remember, too, you were talking about a business venture you were doing, and I think it was in the muscle growth products. You talked about sending people from, like, they're on your email list, so you send them an email, and then you were bringing them to your sales page. But anyways, you said you had a copywriter at the time that was writing your emails for you, but the click-throughs were not good at all. And he was doing one major thing wrong, and you basically took over, kept most of the copy, and I think you changed one or two things you said, and you had results, were dramatic as far as the click-throughs. Can you share with the audience what that was? And this is where you were talking about you just, basically he was giving it away, and you changed that?
Yeah, I had, I've had I've started 3 different supplement companies. The last one I just sold in February of 2012, and it was for the bodybuilding market. And ironically, we test a lot of stuff in email, but ironically, prior to 2007, when we were mailing our customer list, and also just the prospect list, the people who had opted in for some sort of freebie giveaway but had not yet converted to customers, when we sent the entire sales pitch with a call to action in an email, that produced exponentially better results than using a shorter email that drove to the sales pitch on a website. And then for some reason, I don't know what changed, in 2007, it was the exact opposite. We'd send the whole sales pitch in the email, and it would just tank. But if we'd send a short, curiosity-driven email that drove to the website that had the full sales pitch, we got way better conversion to sales. And so I hired a guy to do my email marketing for me, and one of our products was this digestive enzyme product. You digest your food better. You get more protein and stuff in your system where you build muscle faster. So it was an old school bodybuilding secret that had fallen by the wayside. So I brought it back, and here's where we discovered the more blind the email, the more even ridiculously blind and curiosity-driven that people would read the subject line and even the body of the copy of the email, and the reaction would be, what the hell are they talking about? We just got kick-ass click-through rates and great conversion rates. So this guy wrote an email that was like, do you know this old school, jealously guarded secret of the most famous bodybuilders of the 50s and 60s that got steroid-like results? Then he goes into, they discovered that with digestive enzymes, you digest your protein better, and you get much better results, blah, blah, blah. Click here for more info. And that email just absolutely tanked. And so all I did was rewrite it, with a subject line, the jealously guarded secret from the 50s and 60s that got steroid-like gains. And then the body copy was completely blind, too. It was like, did you know there was a guy named Rio Blair back in the 50s and 60s who coached all, the guys, I named them all. Schwarzenegger was one of them, but, Mr. Olympia, he had a secret to getting steroid-like gains, and I didn't mention it was digestive enzymes. And it got onto the page, and we sold a lot of digestive enzymes because telling them in the email what your solution was, they don't understand what digestive enzymes are. You haven't had a chance to build your argument for them. And even the landing page was really blind. It was just about all the success this guy was getting with this discovery. And, so we got really good sales from it. And then we figured out that just the blinder the emails, and even if they made no sense, just evoked curiosity, and we got people to click through to the page. Now somehow we had to hook it with the thing, like if we were talking about protein, the email had to be curiosity driven and blind, but it still had to connect with what we were eventually pitching, which was protein. But it was after 2007 that was the most effective way for us to do our emails. And still up until 2012, when I sold the business, that was the most effective way of email marketing. It got us the highest open rates and the highest click-through rates, which actually, I mean, that's a worthless metric. We all track it, but who gives a crap about open rates and click-through rates, because you can't feed your family with those. But, the ultimate metric is sales. But, still, we all track open rates and click-through rates.
Right. They look nice to say, hey, I had 1,000 open rates, but yeah, like you said, the dollars are the most important.
Yeah, that was our big breakthrough after, for years, just getting such killer results, putting the whole sales pitch in the email. From 2007 on, the very blind, curiosity-driven, very brief emails driving to the sales page is what gave us our best sales conversions from email marketing.
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. Like you said, it just dramatically changed in that 2007 or whatever. That's strange, but I mean, obviously it's, curiosity is a killer human, emotion. So if you can evoke that, like you said, it's what's causing people. On the sales now, I mean, I guess I should ask you about this. It's kind of related, and I know a lot of people that are, basically listening are going to say this is crazy, but it's actually sometimes good to lose money on a customer. So like if, let's say it costs you $10 for a lead and you sell a $5 product, believe it or not, you can actually still make money. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They're not going to pay $10 to make $5. But you can make money on that if you have like a back end in place. And really, any listeners out there that's not sure what the back end is, it's simply sales you make to that customer after the first sale. It's the sales you make in the future to that person. Now, I know you say that the back end may be even 1,000 times more profitable than your initial sales, and I know that's definitely true. But can you tell the audience why that is?
Well, in 19 years, and especially the last 2 years, since I sold my supplement business, I started doing occasionally some copywriting for clients and also some consulting. And every single business I've looked at is very dysfunctional. Even businesses that a lot of people would look at as successful are completely dysfunctional, simply because they don't understand that in these type of businesses, the back end is where it's at. And so they spend most of their time and money just acquiring new customers.
Right.
And so they've got a revolving door. The customers come in and the customers go out. They have no idea how to keep them, how to retain them. They have no idea how to work their back end, so they monetize them as much as possible and sell more products to them.
Right.
The only thing they know is get more customers. That is absolutely the least profitable thing and most expensive thing you can do in your business. In fact, a few years back online, you could make money on the front end. In other words, you could sell a $50 product, and maybe your cost per acquisition for that customer was maybe $20 or $25. And so you made money on the front end. And it was great while the party was going, but customer acquisition costs have gone up. The supply-demand thing is all out of whack. There is way more options now to buy stuff for similar products than there were just 5 years ago. Or I started online when it was wasn't even really a viable media back then, but I still started selling products online in 96. And my God, a monkey, a monkey with a merchant account could have made money online back then.
Yeah.
Now, most markets and most businesses and most very successful online marketing businesses, direct marketing businesses, they don't make any money on the front end. In fact, they consider themselves to be lucky, and they pop the cork on the champagne if they just break even getting a customer, because most of the time they lose money. They spend $80 or $100 or $150 to get a customer to make a $50 sale. Right. So if you don't understand that this business is all about the back end, then all you got is a revolving door, and it's kind of like our currency here in the U.S. or the Social Security system. While the party's going and more people are paying into it than more are taken out, like Madoff's scheme, you give the appearance of success, but the minute those numbers are reversed, the whole damn thing is going to collapse. And almost every single business I've looked at as a consultant over the past 2 years since I sold my business is dysfunctional, and they are rapidly heading for that collapse because they don't know how to work their back end. Here's a perfect example. When I was a completely raw rookie, I had a magazine ad for a bodybuilding product that I ran in all the magazines. Depending upon the magazine it ran in, I would make anywhere from a 300% to 500% return on investment. Now, I didn't know that was highly unusual and was not normal. Everybody in the magazines at the time were running these image ads, and I was the only guy running an advertorial ad, and so I just naturally stood out. And so I just thought that was normal. What I did, I readapted that product to the general health market and tested some newspaper ads. And what happened was, when I got the results from the newspaper ads, like one of them lost a little money. It cost me, I was losing maybe $3 or $4 or $5 per each new customer, and the rest of them broke even. And so I was so used to, making money on the front end of the bodybuilding market, and I was so new at the time. I was so green. I didn't understand this business. I was going to ask you, were you freaking out when you were losing money for every lead at first? Or? Oh yeah, it was. And even the ones that broke even, I ran in like 7 or 8 newspapers. Even the ones that broke even, I was so disappointed. And the media buyer contacts me, and she's excited, and she's like, "Okay, I know because it worked well in these newspapers. We can roll out to these and these." And I said, "Worked well." Well, I just broke even on these, and a couple of them I lost money. She's like, no, honey, that's fine. That's great. You're getting customers for free. I just didn't get it. And what's the timing issue, that needed to be exploited right then. I had discovered a business that could have made me wealthier than I could have imagined. I'd be retired on a beach in 5 years lighting Cuban cigars with $100 bills, because I could have rolled that out in hundreds or thousands of newspapers, acquired hundreds of thousands, millions of customers for free, and then sold them more of the same or different back-end products and gotten filthy rich. But I didn't understand that. All I understood was, well, wait a minute, I'm not making money when I get a customer. And it was probably one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my business. The back end is where it's at. You got to know your numbers, but in certain media with my supplement business, I was paying anywhere from $80 to $160 just to get a $40 sale because I had customer retention systems created and that involved online and offline components. I knew how long they stuck. I knew how much they bought. And even paying $160 to get a $40 sale, I'd be at break even within a couple months. And then after that, I could count on an additional, whatever it was, $300, $400, $500 in profit on the back end.
Right.
So that's a huge mistake even experienced marketers I see making.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of money. I've done it, too, with a lot of businesses in the past where there's so many offers and back ends I just dropped the ball on. And at the time, I didn't really realize the dramatic difference it could have made. I mean, one quick tip, and I mean, I've heard, I think you talk about this, I've heard even back in the day, Gary Halbert, I've learned this, but like a good direct mail tip for everybody listening, if they're kind of wondering how to get started with even the back end, the first way to do it is really a ride-along offer, they call it, where when someone orders something from you, your product, that you're shipping to them, you just put a little note in there with your offer or promotion for the second product, which is your first back-end product you're offering them. So it's a quick way, and it saves you on postage too. It's in the box, they're going to open it, so it gets you a guaranteed open rate because they ordered it from you. So it's a good way to do that. I was going to say too, on the back end, do you have a certain method where you go down on the price? Like if someone bought something for you, so let's say $100, do you always go up? Like here's a $500 product, or do you start low, or does it kind of mix it up? Or
well, in the supplement business, it was usually, the back end was usually at least the same price as the front end product, but we tried to escalate the product prices as we went along, and of course we did customer segmentation. We were able to figure out who our whale customers were. The big spenders who bought higher priced stuff and bought more frequently. So, I mean, it got pretty intricate as far as figuring out who to mail the expensive stuff to. And, we knew based on past buying behavior, we had special messages and special back-end products and price points for certain segments of the list rather than just blanket mailing the list.
Right.
But, yeah, usually the price point, well, one of the products was forced continuity. So they got the product every month at the same price they purchased it at. And then additional back-end offers usually, were higher priced. But not always, it just depends.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know some people, for example, I'm trying to think what they call it. There's a term like the marketing ladder, basically, and it's like where a lot of people suggest, to start with a lower-end product, $10, $20, $30 product, whatever, and then kind of move them up the ladder. Then they jump to $100, then they jump to a $500 product, then they jump into $1,000, and so on. But I've really found personally when I've tried this that just like going back and forth has worked quite well too, because you're catching a lot of the people that aren't looking to spend more, but you're still getting, the back-end profit.
That ascension model is a proven model, and it is a model that I used in the bodybuilding business. And yeah, it's a proven one. It's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they're obviously, they like and trust you. They've already bought from you, so you can kind of move up the ladder. But I think sometimes, not always, but sometimes I think, a lot of people that try to just go up are leaving a lot of money on the table that they could have got from the lower end too.
Yeah, you don't want to ignore the lower end, and if you understand list segmentation, you'll be able to hit them all. You'll hit the lower end offer buyers with that offer. You'll know who they are after a period of time.
Right.
Your higher end buyers, to send them higher end offers, and you also know to send them more frequent offers. And there's other markets too that are completely turning that model on its ear, depending upon the market, but I like to call these markets PWMs, players with money. Okay. I have a client who sells stock market trading information, and they were doing the Ascension model, the lead gen to a lower price product, which in that market was usually a couple $100, then maybe scale them up to 500 or 1,000, and then keep scaling them up. They just decided the lower end buyers were, when they did the numbers, they found out they were the biggest customer service pain in the ass, required the most amount of time, were their worst customers. Their retention time was the worst, and their lifetime customer value was the worst. And so they just completely leapfrogged over this process and went from lead gen to first product being sold 3,000. And next up was, I think, 12,000 or 15,000. Now, obviously, if I could have found a $15,000 product to sell in the bodybuilding supplement market, I would have tried it. But those price points wouldn't have worked in my business. But you get the idea. They just bypassed that Ascension model and just went to their top 20. They just attracted the top 20% of that market, and they'll lead with it. That's all they wanted to deal with, and it was their least hassle type of customer, the highest customer value type of customer, and so that's another model to consider.
Yeah, that makes sense. And those people are obviously pretty qualified if they're putting down 3,000 or more, on their first sale. So definitely, they got money, like you said, the players with money. So yeah, it's nice. And I know we've been talking quite a while, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just want to jump into a couple quick things too to kind of leave some value for the listeners, even though we gave a lot of value today. But what I kind of want to talk about, and I heard you say this, that in businesses you feel that there's 3 very large holes that are just hemorrhaging money like a stuck pig, basically, as you say. Can you maybe share one of those large holes that you feel that every business or most businesses have?
Well, almost nobody works their back end correctly.
Right.
Most
That's good. We
time,
just said that.
It's ignored. You should probably be spending 80% of your time in marketing dollars on your back end and about 20% on getting new customers. I'm making blanket statements. That's going to vary from business to business, and that's also going to vary based upon what stage of business you're in and the maturity level of your business. Customer retention is a big problem. It's the revolving door. They're coming in and going out. If you can just keep your customers buying 1 month longer than they currently are, that has a huge boon to your bottom line.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point too. Even that, I'm glad we hit on the back end too, because like you were saying too, that's a major hole that a lot of businesses just either don't want to bother with, or they get scared because they're losing money on the front end, or they just are lazy and don't follow up with the people after that. They're leaving major money on the table.
That's probably one of the biggest places they're hemorrhaging money is they're spending way too much money on customer acquisition and they don't even know how to, monetize those people. They're just coming in the front door and immediately going out the back door. That's one of the biggest ways they're hemorrhaging money. Customer retention. There's a lot of techniques and programs you can use to really help customer retention. We took our monthly auto ship from like a pathetic 1 month retention rate up to like 4 or 5 months with a carefully coordinated, using both online and offline steps to retain those customers. You said it was from 1 month to 4 months? Yeah, and
Nice.
that was a huge, I mean, you want to talk about a huge boost in net, huge boost in net. You know, another thing, people have their own mental hang-ups about price and what the market will bear, and
Right.
they usually base that on their personal biases and what they see other businesses charging. You'd be surprised how elastic pricing can be, and there's a lot of tricks you can do to sell at higher prices than your competitors, and a combination of those things, getting a customer to buy more frequently, you know, and to buy at higher prices and stick around longer as a customer. Right. Now we're talking exponential increases, you know, in business. And in that supplement business I sold in 2012, I started it in 2004 as a little side project. When I finally got serious about it and implemented exactly what we're talking about, I saw a 1,300% increase in sales in like 4 months, little over 4 months, I guess, 5 months, something Beautiful. Like that.
Yeah, that's a dramatic change. A lot of people really can't see it. You know, when you're starting out, especially, you don't think that's possible. But hey, did you have a way? I guess this would kind of relate too. I mean, you are new to the market somewhat, getting in. Is there a way that you maybe used, or maybe you can share that you kind of added to, say, the credibility, or basically, you know, saying that you should be the person they're ordering from versus them, besides the value building?
Well, yeah, that's really important. You have got, man, there are, I don't care what market you're in nowadays, there are so many options available. You better figure out it's unique about you as the spokesman or whoever your spokesman is, you know, because people don't buy from businesses. They buy from other people. Yeah. And so even in, you know, in the supplement business, I always had a figurehead or a spokesman. You better figure out something unique about him or about the product or about your business process or something. You better figure out why the customers should buy from you as opposed to your competition. That's extremely important. You know, there's a variety of ways of doing that, but the guys who bought the business now, you know, have kind of included a coaching service in addition to the supplement. So now they're positioning it as, you know, hey, man, you can go to bodybuilding.com and all these other just retailers and buy supplements. But, man, when you got questions about how to use it or how to use certain combinations of supplements together or what diet you should use, you know, with that supplement or what training program, forget it, man. The big boys, you're just a number. But with us, hey, man, we got a special forum set up and specially trained customer service people. So they've done a really good job, you know, of making that one of their unique USPs, unique selling propositions in that particular market.
Yeah, they definitely flipped the position. Like you said, I mean, they used being smaller and not as big as those other companies and actually made it into, you know, an advantage, which a lot of people kind of dropped the ball on as well. But they've turned their smallness into a hugeness, really. So that's definitely good. I mean, yeah, I want to thank you, Dan. I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know we've been on the phone for quite a while here, and you know, I know everybody, and you know, listening, I hope you got a lot of good value. And you know, before we go today, can you tell the listeners, Dan, where maybe they can go and learn more about you, or sign up for your email newsletter that you have, or?
Sure. They can go to Dobermandan.com, and it's Doberman just like the dog, DOBERMANDAN.com. I've got a couple hundred blog posts up there, and it basically started out as a way to record some of my marketing lessons for posterity, but it also there's some personal stories on there too. So you know, some of those posts are personal journal stuff about life lessons I've learned, but it all ties into direct response marketing. A lot of how-to information and stuff like that. That's the best way to get info about me.
Nice. And I know, too, because I had an opportunity to read some of the back issues of your newsletter that you sent me, and it was jam-packed. I mean, definitely entertaining, and most importantly, it was full of profitable ideas. Is there a place that people can learn about that newsletter that you offer?
Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to mention that, because I am pretty darn passionate about that. I'm on issue 35, so we're going on almost coming up on 3 years. Nice. I started a paper and ink newsletter called the Doberman Dan Letter, which has morphed now into a membership. I affectionately call it my marketing Camelot. So right. I don't have subscribers. They are Knights of the Round Table, and marketing Camelot includes the monthly paper and ink newsletter. It includes an online membership site with a ton of content, and it includes a monthly webinar. All the webinars are posted on the membership site, too. And it also includes regular open call-in time with me. Certain days and times are set aside where people can call in and get 10 minutes one-on-one with me. And if you go to Doberman Dan, there's a link at the top called Resources, and you'll see some resources there. And the one you want to check out, it says the only way left for the little guy to get rich, and that is the sales copy for the Doberman Dan Letter, the AKA the marketing Camelot.
Nice. So everybody definitely go over there and check that out. And wow, Dan, I want to thank you for sharing all that value. It's definitely been a pleasure. And I want to thank you again, man. And I hope all the listeners out there, hope they enjoyed the show, and most importantly, take action on all the tips Doberman Dan shared today and we talked about. And before you go real quick, this is my second show, so if you just do me 2 quick favors. Well, for one, really go over and check out Doberman Dan for sure. But if you do me 2 quick favors, just simply hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the future business boosting podcast. And if you stuck around this far through the show, you obviously enjoyed it. So make sure you leave those 5-star reviews and comments so we can get the show noticed and really spread the value. And then when you're done, go ahead and head over to FastEasySuccess.com, grab your free business cheat sheets as well. And I'm your host, Eric Barton, signing out today. And I will definitely see you next week for another jam-packed issue of the Fast Easy Success Marketing Insider. Again, thank you, Dan, so much for coming on. And everybody out there, here's to your success.